The people who classify themselves as white are not happy with their appearance. Do you see? So they're not happy. That's why I can't suntan anymore without getting cancer.
It's well established that using indoor tanning beds, like the kind you see at salons, some gyms, that it increases your risk of skin cancer. Years ago, the federal government proposed rules to more heavily regulate these devices, especially for minors. This week, though, the Trump administration abandoned that effort, as NPR's Will Stone reports.
More than 10 years ago, Susan Main surveyed people under 40 with skin cancer and found many had frequented indoor tanning beds, particularly young women.
Some said, I really wish somebody had told me about this and had protected me. So a lot of regret.
Main is an epidemiologist at Yale School of Public Health who worked at the Food and Drug Administration under both President Trump and Biden.
You've got people developing skin cancer in their 20s and 30s.
So she was disappointed that the administration backed away from regulations that would have banned anyone under 18 from using tanning beds and required adults who do use them to periodically sign forms acknowledging the risks.
In my opinion, the argument against the usage of tanning beds is at least as strong as tobacco use.
Hunter Shane studies skin cancer at the University of California, San Francisco. His research has shown using tanning beds nearly triples your risk of melanoma, the deadliest form of skin cancer. And he says it's clear that doing so at a young age is the biggest problem.
It's a particularly vulnerable point in one's life and will have an outsized influence on your risk of skin cancer.
Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. signed off on the decision to withdraw the proposed regulations, citing scientific and technical concerns. An HHS spokesperson told NPR the agency's reassessing how to balance public health considerations with consumer access and choice, but this doesn't change the established science about the increased risk of skin cancer. Kennedy himself likes to talk up the benefits of sunshine, but scientists like Shane say indoor tanning is altogether different.
It's equivalent to being at the equator at high noon.
The regulations face pushback from the industry. The American Suntanning Association pointed out many states already have rules and disputed some of the science. There are indications tanning is making a comeback with the younger generation. Dr. Susan Taylor is president of the American Academy of Dermatology.
All we have to do is look today and scroll through TikTok, scroll through Instagram, and we will see people really trashing sunscreens, promoting tanning beds. But remember, they do not have the facts.
All the more reason, she says, to have national regulations. Will Stone, NPR News.
I have a friend that when stuff like that happens, we just make up something as a remedy because the person will try anything when they're in that type of excruciating pain.
I can't believe you said that because, as Tim Kiley was so sharp in pointing out, he said, I remember a home remedy thing that happened right here on our set.
Some wellness influencers say people need to get dewormed, like a dog or a cat. They recommend a parasite cleanse and sell herbal supplements to do it. Sarah Bowden reports that there is little evidence those treatments work, and doctors warn they could be dangerous.
Kim Rogers goes by the moniker The Worm Queen on TikTok. She's one of the more prominent influencers talking about parasite cleanses. Here she is on the singer Jordan Sparks' podcast back in January.
I think 95% of us have parasites. We've never dewormed.
Rogers declined NPR's request for an interview, but her website recommends that people do a parasite cleanse 3 to 4 times a year. She says the signs that a parasite is living in your body include sugar or salt cravings, bloating, headaches, insomnia.
Grinding the teeth is usually the biggest one that you just know you've got major infestation.
Rogers, who is not a doctor, sells a parasite cleanse kit for $125. It's one of many you can find online. They're mostly supplements which have not been evaluated by the FDA for this use. That concerns Dr. Abhay Satoskar, a pathologist who studies parasites at The Ohio State University.
You're basically experimenting with yourself without even knowing whether you have a parasite or not, right?
Satoskar says you don't need to self-diagnose parasites. There are accurate tests your doctor can give you and safe, effective treatments. And he worries these unproven supplements might contain toxic molecules or compounds.
Or even systemically, they can affecting organs like kidneys and liver and all these things, because some of those things will be absorbed.
Satoskar is one of several doctors who told NPR that more people are contacting them because they think they have a parasite. He says this really picked up last summer after Heidi Klum said she had done a cleanse.
And I get a lot of inquiries to my emails with pictures of presumed they're parasites and all that stuff.
People send you pictures of their poop?
Yes.
Like just random people?
Yes.
Dr. Ehab Ahmed at Northwestern Medicine near Chicago also gets these kinds of unsolicited photos.
Personally, I've never actually had one that was convincing to me of a worm. When we've gone ahead and asked them to bring in the specimen, they've never confirmed that.
Ahmed says some of these messages are sent by people with a mental health disorder called delusional parasitosis. Basically, they're convinced they're infested with parasitic organisms, including those that live in the blood, skin, and organs. But influencers seem most concerned with parasites in the gut, especially worms. Ahmed is worried how this trend is encouraging people, including those with mental health issues, to do cleanses.
A lot of these cleanses will lead to diarrhea, and then the diarrhea will then lead to dehydration, malabsorption, nutrient deficiencies, electrolyte imbalances.
It's not like people never get parasites. Pinworm infections are common among kids. Other parasites are found in undercooked meat or raw fish. Also, don't drink water from places like lakes and creeks. But overall, sanitation in the U.S. is pretty good. And if you are having tummy issues, Ahmed says the best thing to do is talk to your doctor. For NPR News, I'm Sarah Bowden.
A few years ago, Steve Slack's doctor gave him some terrible news.
Steve, I found a very large cancer tumor in your colon, and you need emergency surgery. This was the worst day of my life. Like, absolutely, no one should have to tell their kids that.
At the age of 48, the father of two from Bowmanville, Ontario, was diagnosed with stage 4 colorectal cancer. Initially, Steve says his doctor told him he was still young, and it was probably food sensitivities, and the doctor did not send him for a colonoscopy. But Steve's symptoms got worse and worse, and 2 years later, he was told that he had cancer. And when he got that diagnosis, Steve was scared.
Scared for my family, for my wife and kids, like, what's going to happen if I'm not around? At that time, my kids were 14 and 16, and like, I remember saying to my wife, I have unfinished business here. Like, these kids still need to be raised. They still need a dad in their life. So I'm not going anywhere. Like, I'm going to fight this.
Steve says he was angry that he didn't get a second opinion, angry his doctor hadn't sent him for tests, and angry at cancer. But Steve also says that he changed his mindset.
And this bully is trying to take my kid's dad away from them. It's trying to take my wife's husband away from her. And I was like, I'm not going to let that happen. That was all the motivation I needed. It wasn't about me. I was defending my family. Because cancer was attacking my family by attacking me.
Steve had surgery and chemotherapy, eventually a liver transplant, and now, thankfully, his scans are all clear. He is part of a growing cohort of younger Canadians being diagnosed with colorectal cancer. Canadians born after 1980 are now 2.5 times more likely to be diagnosed with colorectal cancer before the age of 50 compared to earlier generations. And it's because of that the Canadian Cancer Society is calling for the screening age for colorectal cancer to be lowered from age 50 to 45. Dr. Shadi Ashmala is a surgical oncologist at Toronto's Sunnybrook Hospital, specializing in colorectal cancer. Dr. Ashmala, good morning.
Good morning, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. It's worth mentioning that at a population level, these numbers are still low in terms of the number of young people being diagnosed with cancer, but they're not numbers, they're people. And behind those people are stories, and that there has been an increase in those stories that we're hearing, like Steve's. What are you seeing in your own practice?
Yeah, I mean, Steve's story is a common one in my practice, and it is exactly as you said, Matt. It's really quite sobering in that these aren't just numbers. Every one of these stories is a dramatic story that touches many, many lives, not just the patient, but the patient's family, patient's children, patient's parents, which is a new one for us to deal with. Really large groups of people sitting in clinic around and supporting these individual patients who each have a story like this.
You helped start a clinic at Sunnybrook a few years back to treat cancer in younger people. Why was something like that necessary?
Well, it manifests itself, to be honest. It was I'd been in clinic every Tuesday, and every Tuesday there'd be more and more young patients in clinic, and I'd walk into clinic and I'd look first at the older person in the room and realize that was the parent of my patient who was sitting across from them. And that happened more and more often, enough so that it became clear that these young adults have different needs than are what we were used to. And all of a sudden, things like fertility and family planning and child psychology and, all types of genetics and all types of very specific new needs for these colorectal patients started to show themselves. And we decided to sort of formalize that as opposed to make it a patient-by-patient situation. We decided to formalize it into a clinic.
Do we know why? We're going to talk more about this more broadly from a research perspective. But from your perspective, as somebody who sees those patients, what do you think is going on here? Why is there this increase?
I mean, we know the risk factors that are well established for colorectal cancer, and they're often the same risk factors for many different types of cancer. So we know smoking, we know obesity and lack of activity, we know increase in red meats and alcohol, things like that. Like those risk factors are well known to us. But to be honest with you, many, many patients are sitting in my clinic in great shape who take, good care of themselves, who think about everything they eat, who say, what happened? How did this occur? And it's the correlative data that's becoming more and more interesting as opposed to the causative data that we kind of established. And the correlative data is telling us that this is really a new phenomenon. And I think, we recently had a paper that came out about ultra-processed foods. The way we prepare our foods, the way we consume food, what we do to food in order to mass produce it. These are things that I think we're now starting to see the impacts of. There's been some papers around microplastics, increase in stress and increase in cortisol. We know that causes inflammation. We know that inflammation is a precursor for cancer in the gut. So there's a lot of these kind of new factors that are correlative that we're starting to see that are new. And if you look around our lives, it's not difficult to see that there's new impacts. Stress is a good one. That we have way more stress as younger adults than I think we did in the past because of the information that's being fed to us constantly that may have a role.
What are the symptoms of colorectal cancer, and are those symptoms different in younger people?
So the answer to that question is no. The symptoms are very similar in younger people. The issue is that are they being diagnosed and are they being recognized in the same way in a younger person? And that is because most people, when they went to medical school, when you hear a patient's symptoms, you have a differential diagnosis. And that differential diagnosis can be based on age and other factors. And so it's extremely important to recognize that the same symptoms, younger and older patients, are leading to the same disease, and that we shouldn't distinguish these symptoms and the differential diagnosis by age. That's new. And so, when we think about cancer, we think about it in terms of primary prevention and secondary prevention, and then tertiary prevention, which is what I do for a living, take them out. But we don't want to get to that. Primary prevention is in the asymptomatic patient. That's the screening, and that's why people are pushing for a younger age, as am I. Secondary prevention is what you're talking about, Matt, in terms of symptoms. That means that when symptoms present, and symptoms like bleeding from the rectum of any sort, change in bowel habits that's consistent, lower pelvic pain, when these things present, we can't just sort of assume that it's something benign or something non-problematic because it's a younger patient. We need that to be investigated aggressively just as it would in an older patient. And that's kind of the secondary prevention. That's the second step. The first step is the risk factors in the screening and primary prevention. And that really is kind of the mainstay as a population for treating this problem.
And you're on board with that idea of lowering screening ages for colorectal cancer from 50 to 45?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's long overdue, and I'd be pushing for 40, but I think we'll take what we can get. But yeah, I think the data has definitely sort of proven that over the last decade or so. And when we look at these curves of colorectal cancer, right at the age of 50 when screening starts, we see that the rates of colorectal cancer are coming down. So it behooves us to move that to shift that inflection point over to the left and make it 45 or make it 40, wherever we start screening, and aggressively screening, we're going to see a downturn on colorectal cancer and on death from colon cancer.
And that screening, I mean, again, some people could be freaked out because they think it's a colonoscopy, but it's not necessarily that. There's the FIT test as well.
Exactly.
That can be done at home.
Exactly. The FIT test is a great test. It's very sensitive and it's very specific. So if it's positive, there's usually a good reason it's positive, and it's not. If it's negative, that will tell us with great confidence that there isn't a cancer in there. So the FIT test is quite good, and the recommendation currently is for normal risk patients to do a FIT test every 2 years, and for high risk patients to be doing colonoscopies. And high risk is family history or underlying genetic conditions. But either one is great, and that's kind of the push. Is that, as you said in your opening, that colorectal cancer, all colorectal cancer, starts as a tiny polyp that could have been removed with a colonoscopy if caught earlier. And so it's a very curable disease if it's caught at the right time, which makes it that much more heartbreaking. Stories like Steve's at the beginning, where time was a factor, time elapsed, and the prognosis changed.
Is your sense that people are thinking differently about this now, in part because of the stats, but also you think of high-profile stories like the actor James Van Der Beek, who died from colorectal cancer at just 48. Chadwick Boseman was 43 when he died from this cancer. And you wonder whether those sorts of stories, we should be paying attention to this, but whether those sorts of stories in the societies that we live in right now kind of turn people's heads in a different way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, not to be too big picture, but I think those deaths were not in vain, and that I think they will likely save lives. In that, when a story like that comes out, and if you add that with everybody knows somebody, it starts to add up, and it starts to add up in a way that says, wow, like I should, my bowel movements have been different over the last little while. I should do something about that. Or I just turned 50. I can't put this off any longer. And, I think we all now can look around our own lives and see younger people, and everyone, like I said, everyone's got a story of someone they know with a few degrees of separation that has gone through this. So having that manifest in the news absolutely is very helpful in terms of increasing the gravity of the problem for people to recognize that they can do something about this.
Really helpful to speak with you about this, Doctor. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. Thanks again for having me, Matt.
All the best. Dr. Shadi Ashmala is a surgical oncologist at Toronto's Sunnybrook Hospital. Colorectal cancer is not the only cancer that is on the rise in younger people. Miranda Fidler-Benauda is an epidemiologist at the University of Calgary and studies the effects of cancer on young people. Miranda, good morning to you.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. As I mentioned, it's not just colorectal cancer. What else is going on when it comes to cancer in younger people?
That's right. I think colorectal cancer is maybe the one that we've noticed most frequently and that has the greatest increases in these young adults. But we see cancer rising in young ages for many other cancer sites like breast, endometrial cancer, kidney cancer, pancreatic, and testicular too. So this is certainly a phenomenon that is being seen across cancer types for many young people now.
People have been trying to understand, and I asked the doctor about this, what is going on? From your perspective as a researcher, what do you think might be happening here?
Yeah, I completely agree with his response. The fact is, right now, we don't really understand what causes cancer at young ages. So a lot of our hypotheses are based upon what we know causes cancer in older adults. When we look at these cancers that are seeing increases, we know that a lot of them have an underlying risk factor that is excess body weight or being obese. And so that was our first indication to start considering that, as well as other risk factors known to cancer that are related to excess body weight, like physical activity or diet. I think an important factor to recognize, though, is that a risk factor may cause cancer at older ages, but it may not at young ages. And so a great example is excess body weight, where it's actually protective for early onset breast cancer. So I think we're still at that stage of trying to figure out what is happening here, and we're really basing it upon what are the commonalities between these cancer types that are seeing increases.
The doctor talked about some of that correlative data, and some of that has focused in research that's been done in the United States, certainly, and some of the narratives around that, around things like what we're eating, what we're bringing into our bodies, the environments that we're living in, for example. Do you see connections there?
Oh, I completely agree. As was mentioned, these increases are only started with millennials. So really people born in the late 80s, early 90s. So when we're trying to understand what's causing the increases, we have to think what has changed really just in these last few decades. And that's when we are talking about, in the early 90s, there was a lot of antibiotic use, which of course impacts, our microbiome or those bugs in our guts, as does the diet that we have. So we are trying to think about what is new, what has happened in these last few decades that these young people are exposed to, but older generations aren't.
It's also interesting that there has been some cancers decreasing in young people, particularly in young men, cancers of the neck and head and throat, but increasing in young women, and there have been links drawn to alcohol consumption.
Yeah, I can't comment too much about that. I think alcohol consumption has increased in women because it was historically more taboo. Yeah. I think an important thing to mention here, though, is actually the cancer burden in young people is predominantly in females. So 60% of these diagnoses happening in women. So this is definitely a women's health issue overall.
Are we studying young people enough when it comes to cancer and what the roots of this disease may be?
You know what? I think there is a growing momentum to understand what is causing cancer at young ages. The problem is that, as you mentioned at the beginning, this is still a relatively rare cancer to occur because cancer is a disease of aging. And what that means is that it's just going to take time. We need to have many people to be, unfortunately, diagnosed with this cancer to be able to understand what are the causes of it. Because most of the data we have available just doesn't include people so young. When we're thinking about cancer being the outcome. So it's going to take time, unfortunately, but I do think it is internationally recognized now that this is a challenge in cancer and we need to understand what's going on.
You're doing this work, but what would happen if more people like you were doing this? We're studying younger cancer patients. What do you think we would learn?
Yeah, well, I think that's what we're trying to get at. Here in Alberta, we're recruiting over 700 people recently diagnosed with cancer and asking them to look back in time and think about what did they partake in, what were their exposures, what was their body size as a child. And really, that's not going to give us the answer, but it's going to give us some signals that others can explore. And if everyone was doing different contributions to this, the goal here is to pool together, to work together and answer this question. And I think that's probably what's needed because, again, this cancer is relatively rare still at young ages. And so we need to be collaborative in Canada and across the world.
We heard a little bit of this from Steve's perspective and also from what the doctor was saying. But how is a diagnosis of cancer experienced differently by younger people than somebody who might be older?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I focus the majority of my research. And the fact is, when you get a cancer diagnosis at a young age, it is not just impacting you physically, it's impacting you mentally. It completely interrupts your entire life, your education, your work, your forming relationships, your independence. So this is a huge interrupter to the major milestones a young person will be going through. And it's something that's going to last. It's not, oh, you have cancer, you've been treated and it's done. We know that the impact of cancer and its treatment persists for decades after. And so I think we need to think about really the ripple effect that happens when a young person has cancer and how it impacts not only them, but their family, their friends, their society, because these are really key people in our world. They are key people for being caregivers to older parents or their young children. They're key players in our economy. So there's a real significant impact of these cancer diagnoses. And even if the numbers are small, the impact is huge.
What should we be thinking about then when it comes to screening for this? The Canadian Cancer Society, particularly with colorectal cancer, wants the screening age lowered to 45. Is that enough? And what else should we be thinking about?
Yeah, so I think they are correct. This is what we are seeing. We are seeing patients want this. And we're also seeing that new research from the U.S. is showing that colorectal cancer is the leading cause of death In males under age 50, and in females, it's the second leading cause of death. So this means that cancers aren't just being diagnosed, but these individuals are having really poor outcomes after their diagnosis too. So I think introducing screening, as the doctor had mentioned, will decrease mortality. The other hand, though, is that we need to make sure our health systems are able to respond to the rise and demand in screening. And not only that, anytime we introduce screening or lower the age, what that means is also picking up people who do have cancer. So if our health system is already underburdened, facing significant delays getting people in to get cancer treatment, this will only compound that. So we really, I think as the CCS recommended, was that this is the recommendation, but we need to make sure our health systems are able to support it in order for it to make a difference and make it equitable. We don't want to be only benefiting some people. We want to be benefiting all Canadians.
You're 35 years old, is that right?
That's right.
What is it like that you're right in the demographic that we're talking about here? What is it like to study the effects of this disease in your peers?
Yeah, well, when I started working in this area, which is nearly 15 years ago now, we recognized that these young people with cancer were overlooked in our cancer care system and in research. But I didn't know anyone who had cancer at a young age. You know, I just looked at their data or I saw their files. But now that's not the case. You know, as was mentioned, we see it in the media, but I see it in my daily life. I see it when other parents at my children's daycare are now being diagnosed with cancer. This is not some remote idea where I work on a research topic that does not impact me anymore. I'm seeing it daily, and I think a lot of people around me are seeing it daily too. So this is really, has been so overwhelming to witness as a researcher and also as a member of that demographic, of how the impact, how that's like closing in, let's say, because that's the reality. We now see it. It's no longer this remote idea.
I can hear that in your voice. I mean, you're not talking about something that is removed and academic, if I can put it that way. This feels very real.
Oh, it is very real. And I must admit, like, as was mentioned, these are data, these are numbers. Yeah. Behind each person, each number is a person, and many people, and many stories, and many children, and you know, just the impact is so real and large, and that's why sometimes I can be frustrated when they say, oh, but it's still rare, it's still not many people, but that's where I really try to emphasize the impact is so great on these young people and the world around them. And this isn't anymore just something we can, push aside. This is increasingly in our daily lives. And really we need to be doing more now because we can only imagine what's to come. Nothing is changing in our environment or our diet. So we really need to be more proactive in trying to get these young people and healthcare providers to recognize the symptoms and diagnose people earlier.
Miranda, thanks for this. Really good to talk to you.
Thanks so much for having me. Take care.
And you, Miranda Fiedler-Benauda, is an epidemiologist at the University of Calgary. She studies the effects of cancer on young people.
Today I'd like to talk to you about the power of the sun. Solar power is the most abundant, most renewable resource we have.
Americans are concerned about higher energy prices. Plug-in solar panels come with a promise to shave off part of your utility bill. These panels can be purchased at a store, placed on a porch or balcony, and plugged into a regular outlet. Lawmakers around the country are considering bills that would make it easier to use these solar panels, but now utilities are raising safety issues. Jeff Brady from NPR's Climate Desk is here to talk about all this. Good morning, Jeff.
Good morning.
So how do these bills in state legislatures make it easier to use plug-in solar panels?
Well, these plug-in solar panels are a lot cheaper than rooftop systems, and these bills exempt them from complicated connection agreements with utilities. Those are needed for the larger rooftop solar panel systems because they send electricity out onto the grid where a utility buys it. And these agreements, along with installation and permitting costs, they can double the price of solar panels. So last year, Utah was the first state to pass a law exempting plug-in or balcony solar panels from these connection agreements. More than 30 bills have been introduced in state legislatures, but now at least 6 of those have been withdrawn because utilities told lawmakers they have safety concerns.
Okay, let's dig into that. What kind of safety issues are utilities raising about plug-in solar panels?
These panels, they're different from most appliances that people use because they generate electricity rather than consume it. So the plug on the end of the cord, that could shock someone. And utilities, they're more concerned about what happens during a power outage. Theoretically, a plug-in panel that they don't know about, it could send electricity through a house's wiring and out onto the grid where it could shock a utility worker. Here's Emily Patuk. She's a lobbyist with Georgia Electric Membership Corporation, which represents cooperative utilities, and this was at a committee hearing last month.
Providing safe, reliable, and affordable power is a key mission of every EMC in the state, and the safety of our linemen and others that work on that system is a reason that we oppose House Bill 1304.
There was a lot of confusion at that hearing about how plug-in panels work and what safety measures already exist. So the committee chair decided to delay a vote until questions could be addressed. And similar bills have been delayed in Arizona, Indiana, New Mexico, Washington State, and also in Wyoming.
How are the safety issues being addressed?
There are technologies available that shut plug-in solar panels down in less than a second when there's a power outage. So the risk of shock goes away under those circumstances. The company UL Solutions, it used to be called Underwriters Laboratories, they test and certify products to make sure they meet safety standards. But, probably the most compelling piece of evidence is Germany. That country has more than 1.2 million balcony solar panels registered with no safety problems reported. I talked with Cora Stryker. She's at the advocacy group Bright Saver. She thinks these concerns are less about safety and more about utilities facing competition.
Kicking up dust regarding safety concerns is definitely a strategy being used by people who don't want this for their own self-interested reasons.
The utilities and trade groups we contacted for this story didn't comment on Stryker's kicking up dust allegation.
So as lawmakers consider the remaining bills, how soon might people be able to buy these plug-in solar panels?
They're actually available now, but the ones on the market are not certified by UL Solutions yet. That company says we can expect certified products in a matter of months.
Jeff Brady from NPR's Climate Desk. Thanks for your reporting, Jeff.
Thank you.
Well, Haiti is on the list of what's supposed to be. Haiti, the people who are called Haitians, predominantly are people who are classified as non-white, but they're not supposed to ever have anything under the system of white supremacy except punishment.
Cuba, a land of struggle, a land of sacrifice. Cuba, a place where the slogan, homeland or death, built a proud new nation. Cuba, home to Assata Shakur and Guillermo Morales, our own freedom fighters.
President Trump and a number of US presidents before him have been very explicit in their calls for a change of government in Havana. Last month, Washington imposed a near-total fuel blockade on Cuba, and it's having a big impact. Early on Monday, there was the first total collapse of the island's electricity grid.
Since last night, it has been 24 hours without electricity. On some days, we have gone without for 17 hours, depending on how the connection to the system is and how the systems are doing.
It will be 2 or 3 days without electricity, and what little we have to eat spoils. Nobody says anything, and nobody has answers for anything.
We can't do anything. I eat in the dark, I have breakfast in the dark, I shower in the dark, always everything in the dark, all night. What else can I say?
I got more from BBC Monitoring's Pascal Fletcher, a former Cuba-based reporter who's now in Miami.
I wouldn't want to minimize in any way the really dire situation that exists there. If you can just imagine, everything that you take for granted in your daily life, electricity, water, piped water, pumped water, food, medicines, even the most basic aspirins, going to the doctor, public transport, everything for several weeks now and even longer has been really seriously affected by this. Everyday life, economic life certainly, but even everyday life has pretty much come to a standstill.
A few moments ago, we heard one Cuban resident saying nobody tells us anything and nobody knows anything. Do people blame the Americans for this or the Cuban government?
I think you'll find a bit of both, certainly. Obviously there are people who still support the system, and they will tend to emphasize the, if you like, the measures being taken by the U.S. administration, the shut-off particularly of oil supplies. But it's also true that, it's very visible, considerable discontent about the situation, and this has sometimes exploded into, targeting the actual, existing government. We did see on Friday an attack on a Communist Party municipal committee in a town in central Cuba, Moron, and that was significant. That shows you, and shouts of things like freedom and down with communism, graffiti on the walls. That shows you that there is considerable sort of anti-government sentiment as well.
Pascal, as people coped on Monday without electricity, Donald Trump was asked about how he saw the future of Cuba. Let's hear what he had to say.
All my life I've been hearing about the United States and Cuba. When will the United States do it? I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Taking Cuba.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it.
Around about the same time as that, the Cuban government was saying that it would allow Cubans living abroad to invest back in the country, back in Cuba. Do you see that as a coincidence that was happening at the same time as this blockade?
No, it's certainly not a coincidence. The Cuban government is seeking to respond. We've already had some announcements of prisoner releases, although they didn't want to link it to U.S. pressure. But certainly they're probably facing the most pressure they have for decades, maybe back since, the collapse of the Soviet Union, when I actually was in Cuba. And even then we went back to, ox carts and bicycles. But of course the resilience of the system, we're 25 years on, is much weaker now. There's much less political support. So, it really is a much worsened situation. But certainly they are trying to sort of, make some kind of gestures. But I think, with what Trump's saying, we don't really know what's going to happen next.
Pascal Fletcher.
They call me the Lord of War. But perhaps it is you.
It's not Lord of War. It's Warlord.
Thank you, but I prefer it my way.
The technology of war is evolving fast, and drones are at the center of it. We've seen this in the ongoing U.S.-Israeli war with Iran. Unmanned drones are cheaper than missiles, easy to mass produce, can travel long distances, and strike with precision. They were once the domain of major militaries, but they are now spreading rapidly, reshaping conflicts and also fueling criminal innovation in places like Latin America. To hear more about this, we've asked 3 NPR correspondents to find out how drone warfare is changing the balance of power in the regions they cover, from drug cartels in Mexico, the war in Sudan, and where we start this morning, Ukraine. Here's NPR Ukraine correspondent Joanna Kakissis.
You are hearing a Sting drone made by the Ukrainian company Wild Hornets and featured in this promotional video.
Sting, Shahed Interceptor.
This small drone hunts and destroys Iranian-designed Shahed drones, which Russia uses to attack Ukrainian cities nearly every night. Yuri Cherevashenko is deputy commander of Ukraine's air defense cover forces, and he sees interceptor drones in action.
When these drones go on combat duty, we see in real time what needs to be changed.
Hundreds of Ukrainian companies produce drones. Many are used in air operations. On the Black Sea, there are marine drones equipped with machine guns. And on land, Ukrainian forces use ground drones, which resemble small tractors and sound like this. Ukraine's 93rd Brigade showed us their land drones in eastern Ukraine. NPR is using military call signs to identify the soldiers at the request of the Ukrainian military, which cites security concerns. Docent is the engineer in charge of the unit's ground drones. What do these here usually carry?
Food, water, ammunition, but we can do some things like big bada boom.
Like carrying explosives into enemy positions. The ground drones can also bring back wounded Ukrainian soldiers.
That's why they help us very much, because sometimes we can't get to remote places, but they can.
Drones are everywhere here, and they have redrawn the map of the front line and the war itself. This is NPR's Joanna Kakissis reporting from Ukraine.
Firefighters tackled the blaze at the brutal scene of a drone attack at a market in central Sudan in late February. Local media filmed emergency responders searching through torched stores in El Obeid city where 9 people were killed. This is the daily terror of drone strikes haunting everyday life and the new phase of the conflict across Sudan, especially in the central Kordofan region, now a key battleground between the Sudanese armed forces and the paramilitary rapid support forces. These strikes have become a major feature of the almost 3-year conflict that has caused the world's largest humanitarian crisis. Both sides are fighting to control the strategic region that could turn the war in either's favor, with the Sudanese army recording gains in recent months. But in the shifting front lines of Sudan's drone warfare, civilians are often the victims. Last year, NPR reported from Atbara, a city in central Sudan that had become a safe haven during the war, until waves of RSF drone strikes hit displacement camps and public infrastructure. At the Atbara power station, workers rushed to rebuild a transmission destroyed from drone strikes the day before. But just days after, it was hit again. Dr. Lad Serwat is a senior Africa analyst at Armed Conflict Location and Event Data, an independent conflict monitoring group.
During the early parts of the war in Sudan, the Sudanese armed forces held aerial superiority through their use of jets as well as through drones. However, over the course of the conflict, the warring rapid support forces have also gained increased stock and increased their use of drones.
He said this year there's been a surge in attacks.
In the early months of 2026, ACLA data has already recorded more drone strikes in Sudan than any previous quarter in the war so far.
And as both sides use drones to minimize casualties among their ranks, it's the civilians that are increasingly vulnerable. Emmanuel Akinwotu, NPR News, Lagos.
In Mexico, drones became news in February when airspace over El Paso in rural New Mexico was closed after U.S. authorities used an anti-drone laser. Across the border in the U.S., Bernalillo County District Attorney Sam Bergman, who also chairs New Mexico's Organized Crime Commission, says drones are a huge problem.
We are very concerned, extremely concerned about the number of drones driven by cartels crossing the border on a daily basis.
He says the number of drones crossing the border into the U.S. has increased in the past year or so, and it's all kinds.
Drones that are purchased in stores, they modify their capacity to carry payloads.
Some of them, says Bergman, drop off drugs. Others are used by human smugglers to monitor American law enforcement. Mexican authorities, on the other hand, say drones have been used by cartels since 2010, but not along the U.S. border. Instead, they are being used inside Mexico to move drugs and drop bombs. On the outskirts of Juarez, just across the border from New Mexico, we asked around to see if anyone had seen drones flying around the border. Everyone says the same. The only drones they've ever seen are the ones Mexican police or military use to investigate murders. Teresa Renteria sells used clothes a stone's throw from where the airspace was closed, and she thinks this whole drone thing is a political ploy.
Pues más bien es puro pedo que quiere hacer el gobierno de allá, no para estar aquí en México. La verdad.
It's the American government, she says, trying to start trouble here. They're trying to mess with us here in Mexico. President Trump, she says, has been threatening American military action, and cartel drones could prove the perfect excuse. I ask her if that doesn't scare her.
Pues en cierta parte sí, porque conocemos a ese viejo que es muy traicionero. La verdad, o sea, él es muy ventajoso.
We are scared, she says, because we know that old man will betray us. Trump, she said, will do anything to take advantage. Ada Peralta, NPR News, Juarez.
Along with Ada, we heard from NPR Africa correspondent Emmanuel Akinwotu and NPR Ukraine correspondent Joanna Kakissis.
arrested while protesting the Trump administration's mass detention and deportation campaigns say federal agents appear to take DNA samples from them. The practice is legal, but raises questions about what the government may do with sensitive genetic information. NPR's Meg Anderson reports.
In late January, Ben and his wife Gabby were driving to their house in northeast Minneapolis when they got a message that federal immigration officers were nearby. They had been watching ICE activity in the city for weeks, so they headed over.
There were a lot of observers around, like people were coming out of their houses. I got out of the car because I was like, got to go film.
They requested that NPR only use their first names because they worry the federal government will retaliate against them. When they arrived, Ben stood on the side of the road filming the officers who were already back inside their car.
It looked like they were about to leave, but they stopped and got out of the car, and that's when I got tackled.
Body slammed?
It wasn't really a tackle, yeah.
It was a body slam. He picked you up and slammed you down.
Video of the incident shows a masked immigration officer running at Ben and slamming him to the ground. 3 federal officers pinned him down and dragged him to their car. Ben was held in custody for about 3 hours. Before officers released him, they took his photo, got his fingerprints.
And then that's when the DNA happened.
An officer took a swab that looked like a Q-tip and ran it along the inside of Ben's cheek to collect his saliva.
It was super casual. It was just like, okay, yeah, so we're going to take this now. And I was like, oh, okay.
He was in a daze and didn't even really realize what was happening. NPR found half a dozen other people in Illinois, Oregon, and others in Minnesota who described similar occurrences in recent months of ICE taking what appeared to be a DNA sample after arresting them. They all said they were arrested seemingly without provocation while protesting the Trump administration's immigration enforcement tactics. The federal government does have broad authority to take the DNA of people it's arrested. In fact, in a statement to NPR, a spokesperson for the Department of Homeland Security noted that federal law actually requires federal law enforcement to collect DNA samples from anyone arrested or facing charges. But legal experts say that statute is overly broad.
What law enforcement would say is these were people that were facing charges.
Erin Murphy is a law professor at New York University.
What are the charges they're facing if it's civil immigration authorities doing what seems to be unlawful interference with First Amendment rights? Even if that's the asserted basis, is that constitutional?
In 2013, the Supreme Court ruled that a Maryland law that forced an arrested person to give their DNA to police was constitutional. But that case had limitations. It involved a law that required the arrest to be for a serious crime, and it had to be a lawful arrest based on probable cause.
It's the arrest part that probably is the pressure point that matters the most.
That's Oren Kerr, a law professor at Stanford University. He says the worry is what happens if an officer arrests someone for something they were legally free to do, like peacefully protesting.
The officer says, I think you've crossed the line. I'm going to arrest you. It turns out the officer was wrong, but the DNA test has been conducted and the information's been entered into the database. What then?
Kerr says it's not clear how a person could get those records erased. It's also unclear where the samples are going or how they'll be used. DHS did not respond to questions about that. In the past, DNA taken by immigration officers has ended up in a big centralized police database run by the FBI. Murphy of NYU says that is particularly troubling because genetic information is so sensitive.
You're not just giving up some abstract stuff. You're giving up valuable information.
DNA tests can reveal things like information about a person's ancestry or their risk of developing certain health conditions. And Murphy says,
you're not just taking their DNA right in this moment in time. You're taking their children's DNA and their children's DNA.
The fear, she says, is that all of that information could be weaponized. After his arrest in Minneapolis, Ben, the man tackled by ICE, was in a lot of pain, even a few days later. He went to the doctor.
And that's when it was confirmed I had 3 cracked ribs.
His medical records say he suffered, quote, blunt chest trauma. More than a month later, he still feels some pain. But he says what's been more lasting is the psychological stress the whole ordeal caused.
I don't know. I don't really have the words for it, but it's just not something that should have ever happened.
He says that includes the fact that his DNA is now who knows where. Meg Anderson, NPR News, Minneapolis.
But that's just adds to the confusion. I mean, it's the same way that a whole bunch of white people now have gone on Indian reservations and they run into casinos and calling themselves Indians. They just put on some feathers and that's it.
Right.
Yeah.
Oklahoma Senator Mark Wayne Mullen will face his colleagues tomorrow for his confirmation hearing to lead the Department of Homeland Security. Mullen's nomination comes after President Trump fired former DHS head Kristi Noem in the first cabinet shakeup of his second term. Lisa Desjardins takes a look at how Senator Mullen went from an MMA fighter to a MAGA warrior and how he might soon run DHS.
Yes, tonight, please put your hands together for Senator Mark Wayne Mullen.
He is unconventional, a former MMA fighter, a businessman without a bachelor's degree, and he's often unfiltered. For example, stumping for the Trump campaign in 2024 in North Carolina.
Man, I'd like to say I got a great connection in North Carolina. I don't, really.
But he is Oklahoma, through and through.
Hi, I'm Mark Wayne Mullen with Mullen Plumbing.
The owner of his family's plumbing business and a cattle rancher, Mullen branded himself as a political outsider when he first ran for Oklahoma's 2nd Congressional District in 2011.
Like you, Mark Wayne Mullen has had enough of Washington intruding in our lives.
Mullen won, becoming the 2nd Republican to represent the district in a century.
He's from Stillwell, Oklahoma, which is a very rural part of the state. It also is one of the poorest cities in all of the country.
Reese Gorman reports on Congress for Notice and covered Mullen as an Oklahoma reporter, including Mullen's pledge to serve no more than 3 House terms. But when the time came, Mullen and his wife Kristi reconsidered, prayed, and...
We looked at each other and we said, we're running again. And immediately, we understand that people are going to be upset. And we get that. We understand it.
Oklahomans were definitely upset about it, but it didn't cost him in the election.
Mullen won the race, and more attention followed, including from President Donald Trump.
And President Trump was one of the first people to call me.
Mullen said on a podcast last year that Trump phoned him weekly after his son suffered a traumatic brain injury in 2020. Later that year, when Trump lost the presidential election, Mullen echoed lies that the vote was stolen and said he planned to contest the results.
When there's as many questions still out there on the electoral votes and the votes that took place, we have to challenge it. That's what Congress is supposed to do on January 6th. Go on in!
Instead, rioters stormed the Capitol on January 6th. That day, Mullen helped Capitol Police block the doors to the House chamber.
The noes have it.
Hours later, he still voted to challenge the 2020 election results and continued to defend Trump. And soon, Trump backed Mullen in his 2022 Senate run. Mullen won that too, and as a member of the Cherokee Nation, he became the first Native American senator since 2005. And when Trump hit the campaign trail for the 2024 election...
Why is tribal land treated like public land?
Mullen especially reached out to tribal areas. Among Republicans, he's known as a specialist in building relationships.
Even though he's a senator, he's in these House GOP conference meetings every week. He sees himself as a conduit between Senate leadership and House leadership and the White House.
That has included staunch work for Trump's immigration agenda, backing his efforts to deport undocumented migrants and end birthright citizenship, as well as defending federal officers after the killings of Alex Preddy and Renee Good in Minnesota.
If you don't want to be in harm's way, don't get in the way of police officers from doing their job.
At the same time, Mullen also is seen as potentially open to limited immigration reform with a legal status for some.
I think there would be a conversation that might have towards like DACA individuals that were brought here under the age of 18 by their parents. Maybe if you want to talk to someone that's been here in the country for 10 years or longer.
Mullen's tenure in Congress has not come without controversy. The House Ethics Committee ordered Mullen to pay $40,000 back to his family business after learning he received company money through an accounting error, violating ethics guidance. And in 2023, he made headlines when he challenged the Teamsters Union president, Sean O'Brien, to a fight during a Senate hearing.
You want to do it now?
I'd love to do it right now.
Well, stand your butt up then.
You stand your butt up.
Oh, hold on.
Big
Oh,
guy.
oh, stop it.
Is that your solution, every Poland? No, sit down. Sit down. Okay. You're a United States Senator. Sit down. Active. Oh, okay. Sit down, please.
But Mullen applied relationship skills, and O'Brien is now a supporter, endorsing Mullen to be DHS secretary as someone willing to, quote, stand his butt up for the country. Speaking to his approach, Mullen praised his predecessor, Kristi Noem, but told reporters earlier this month that he wants to improve the agency.
Is there always lessons to be learned? Listen, my wife and I, we have, over the years, we have been fortunate enough to purchase companies and grow our companies, and every day there's something you can do better. And so I think there's an opportunity to build off successes, and there's also opportunities to build off things that maybe didn't go quite as planned.
But there are questions about his experience. Mullen has worked with FEMA on Oklahoma disasters.
But he doesn't really have the immigration experience or just the experience that you usually would see in cabinet secretaries. Trump loves loyalty, loves people to not criticize him, and he's found that in Markwayne Mullin.
Mullin will face his fellow senators.
I'll be back.
And the Senate committee overseeing Homeland Security at his confirmation hearing on Wednesday. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Lisa Desjardins.
And you can live stream Senator Markwayne Mullin's confirmation hearing tomorrow beginning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern on our website and on our YouTube page.
A text out of context is a pretext. This matter must be put in some kind of historical perspective. Surely we must know that racism is the cancer of the American soul.
Well, earlier today, a man accused of a hate crime pleaded guilty inside of a federal courtroom. We are now hearing from investigators who say this case moved unusually fast. News 19's Caci was inside the courtroom, and now she is giving us some more details. In fact, she is joining us live, giving us the update. And Kiki, I think it's really important to point out that we are not allowed to have cameras inside of federal courtrooms, so she is giving us some explanation as to what she saw. Kiki.
Right, Erica. No videotaping is allowed in the federal courtroom, but I was in there taking notes, and here's what I saw. The suspect, Jonathan Felkel, appeared nervous as he spoke to the judge. His attorney, Barry George, placing a hand on his back, appearing to comfort him. Now, as part of his plea agreement, he faces 8 to 9 years in prison, followed by supervised probation. He also faces restitution and a no-contact order with the victim. Prosecutors say this case began in July 2025, when Jonathan Felkel fired shots at his neighbor, Jarvis McKenzie, outside a neighborhood where both men lived. Before firing the shots, prosecutors say he used a racial slur at the victim. The victim was not hit. Investigators said Felkel told them he was trying to scare McKenzie because he believed, based on the victim's race, that he had ties to dangerous criminals. Less than a year later, that case has already reached a guilty plea in federal court.
This happened in July of 2025. We were soon on the phone with the sheriff and the FBI, and we're sitting here with a guilty plea that you just witnessed in court. That's 9 months. That is record time for something like this.
Felkel pleaded guilty to violating the Fair Housing Act in what authorities describe as a racially motivated case. It's also highlighting a key issue in South Carolina, where there is no state-level hate crime law.
Unfortunately, we do have to turn to the federal government, U.S. Attorney's Office, and FBI when someone commits a hate crime. It's still a shame we're only one of 2 states in the whole United States that doesn't have it.
Richland County Sheriff Leon Lott says this case deeply impacted the victim and the community.
Let's don't focus so much on Finkel, the bad guy. Let's focus on the victim and his family, how they felt that morning and how they continue to feel.
While the victim in this case has spoken publicly before and was in court today with his attorney, Tyler Bailey, he did not make any statements. Law enforcement also had a warning for others.
We're going to come after you. The full weight of the Sheriff's Department, FBI, United States Attorney's Office, they're going to fall on top of you.
Felkel remains in custody while a pre-sentence report is prepared before a final sentence is handed down. The final sentencing decision is expected in the next couple months. Felkel also faces state charges, but it's unclear when he might go to trial for those. In Columbia, Kiki Gashu, News 19, WLTX.
Let me say something that gets to the very crux of the matter, and this may be offensive for some to hear,
we're not on the side that we're on. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Say that again.
Let me say it one more time for those of you who didn't hear me. White people, we have been the problem for 400 years.
Robbery, recklessly endangering another person, harassment, and other traffic offenses. Now, 2 different women in 2 different cars told me that they felt they were in danger, and that was before they found out that he's a township official.
You cut me off back there and everybody else.
A traffic confrontation quickly escalating. When Peter Caci, the planning administrator from Manheim Township, gets out of his car.
He had so much rage that he just went into the car and tried to rip my phone out of my hand and started hitting me and punching me like he was full of rage. And it's scary. It's scary. I don't even know if I could take that out of my mind.
Susie Gomez had the sense to start recording, describing his driving as reckless and full of rage. That video even capturing Caci use the N-word. And it appears he smacks the phone from her hand.
Everybody else back there. Don't touch my phone.
Yes, I'm very distraught. Like, I'm afraid, like I'm still shaking because I've never been attacked of this magnitude.
The township manager confirms that Caci is the man in that video and says that he's on administrative leave as they investigate the, quote, out-of-work incident. We tried reaching out to Caci, but he did not respond.
All that rage and bigotry, I couldn't believe it.
Another woman on the scene allegedly harassed as well. Ayanda says the road rage was originally directed at her.
There was a guy who was really close to me, like trailing, like almost touching my car. But again, I didn't think anything of it. We go over the bridge, and that's when things like really ramped up. And he's like swerving in and out, in and out.
Upset that her 2-year-old son, who was in the car with her, had to witness what happened next.
And he tells me to shut the F up, mind my business, and then starts calling me racial slurs.
When you find out that he is an administrative person representing the people in the city or township, holding that position with that much hatred and slur coming out of his mouth, he needs to be held accountable.
We tried reaching out to Caci, but he did not respond. His preliminary hearing is set for March 12th. For now, we're in Lancaster City. Lily Sexton, CBS 21 News.
Bapekisa kinga bande kokombo ya Lumumba dalobate Mobutu andimi alobi naloba Banyokola kinga bande ko Balinga kinalela Lumumba te Lumumba kufeli l'unité nationale Mobutu atiye héros national Baseka kinga bandeko Nakoma kindeko bibanda tango Basuyo na mandefu yo nationalisme Mobutu apekisi tribalisme Nakima kindako nanga bandeko Balinga kinaloba Lumumba te Delo la vérité ou rien que la vérité Mobutu akitani Lumumba
Congolese have been massacred by white people in the Congo for years and years and years. And if the shoe is now on the other foot, only thing I can say is it's like chickens that always come back home to roost.
Do you personally feel, though, that there's some shame or involvement here or some guilt associated with the killing of other human beings?
I think that the white people should be ashamed of the deplorable situation that has been existing in the Congo, which is not the fault of the Congolese, but which is the result of instigation by European powers who are fighting each other over the mineral wealth of the Congo. And now to make it appear that the Congolese themselves are criminals or brutes because they're reacting to these injustices that they've been victimized by is again ducking the question. C.O.W.S is the murderer of Lumumba, who was the rightful prime minister of the Congo. C.O.W.S is the man whose forces fought against the United Nations forces and against the United States, and despite this criminal past of C.O.W.S, now the United States is backing C.O.W.S, who has hired South African mercenaries, who are hired killers to disrupt the peaceful efforts of the freedom fighters from Stanleyville to make the type of country there that they want. And it is this American support of C.O.W.S, actually, that's at the root of the whole problem.
A court case in Belgium is drawing attention in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Judges have ordered a trial for a former Belgian diplomat over his alleged role in the killing of the country's first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba. Étienne Davignon was a young diplomat working in Congo at the time of the 1961 assassination. Many here say the move is long overdue.
The historical and legal truth of that case ought to be revealed so that Congolese citizens and the rest of the world get to know what exactly led the colonialists to assassinate Lumumba.
Patrice Emery Lumumba led Congo to independence in 1960 and was killed months later during political turmoil. His family has pushed for justice since 2011, but some question why the case is coming so late.
It was the Belgian government that ordered the assassination of Lumumba. The officers were just executing orders. It's unusual for this case to be brought up now, more than 50 years later after Lumumba's family demanded justice. They want to condemn a poor elderly man in his final days to cover up for the real culprits.
Étienne Davignon faces 3 counts linked to war crimes and is the last surviving suspect. The court indicated that proceedings may begin in 2027.
The Belgian court's decision to put the 93-year-old former diplomat on trial is a rare step toward accountability for colonial-era abuses. For many in Congo, it answers a long-standing call for truth and justice for the killing of their first Prime Minister, Patrice Lumumba. Chris Ochamringa, Africa News, Kinshasa.
Context of White Supremacy. Caci Renegade in for another broadcast, hopefully to share constructive information on the global system of white supremacy. Today's date, Saturday, March 21, 2026. So I have been told. Did you hear that at the end? They said they were reporting live from Kinshasa. I said during the middle when we were reading Andre Blum, My Country Africa, right after I saw Gus T soundtrack to a coup d'etat 3 times in the big screen, I said, you know, I think that Rumble in the Jungle thing, Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, that was probably a part of the same campaign that was involved with the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. All that white supremacy, racism, and we gonna steal all their minerals and loot everything else. We got to control the niggers in this, and we ain't doing no independence and all that. That's probably why you would have that fight there a few years later in Kinshasa. Any hoodles, I can only say, man, it has been. We just had the Academy Awards this past weekend, right? Congratulations, Michael B. Jordan. Gus T still ain't gonna watch Sinners. But congratulations, Michael B. Jordan. That's it. This time last year, I was more attentive to a film that was up for an Academy Award that I had seen 3 times, soundtrack to a coup d'etat. Man, the song you heard right there one of many songs included in that documentary film that was nominated for an Oscar last year. Best documentary film, didn't win, but I thought easily best film that I saw in 2024, and probably still, now I can say removed a year and a half, I have not seen anything close. I've been to a number of film festivals since then and seen a lot of TV. Nothing close. And I said from day one, that is a Belgian film, soundtrack to a coup d'etat, which, what did I say that film is about? How white people around the world, that means there could be some prosecutions here too, should be, here being the U.S., should be, less everybody died. They got good benefits for racist team, the white race. But I said way back then, wow, amazing, all of the layers of white supremacy that are revealed in that film. And I said it's being about white people, how white people around the world orchestrated the assassination of Patrice Lumumba and then lied about having done so. Belgian film, Johan Grimaud-Pré, sat right next to him in L.A. when I watched the film. I suspect that film coming out recently and it got nominated for an Oscar here. It's not even a U.S. film. You get a foreign film nominated for a U.S. award, and it got a big buzz. It was at 2 different U.S. film festivals that I was at, and I know it was at others as well. That's how I first heard about it at the beginning of the year. That film was doing extremely well at film festivals, and I see why. But I suspect that had an impact on, now they have a prosecution of a white Belgian diplomat. Oh my God. That's when I'm going to have to kind of pay attention. Like, what is happening in Belgium? I know the white people there have got to feel like you heard in the report, like, they're going to drag some 93-year-old white man. Man, don't you even, on Patrice Lumumba and white people bragging about having his teeth in their pocket. We read Andre Bloom, My Country Africa. If you didn't see the movie, you can go back, Catherine Massey Book Club, reading Global System. Even she understood way back then, global plot to kill Patrice Lumumba. That's white people around the world planning and orchestrating the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. But we talked about this all then. I am sure that film had an influence on this arrest happening. And man, I do not want to hear nothing about, no, he's all old and all that. White people go and get those Nazis who are 95, 99, 100. You had anything to do with them old gas ovens and that old Nazi, and get on. If we got to get you on the wheelchair and get an oxygen tank, get on in that courtroom. As it should be, as I understand it. Ain't no time limit on murder case. No statute of limitations on that. At least that's the way it is here. Should be the same in Belgium. Hey, answer, stand by your work. And especially, you gonna kill someone, chop them up, dissolve the body in acid, and then is 2 teeth left. We gonna save those and brag about having Mumba's teeth. I wouldn't care if he 116. Like, wheel him in there. Get his grandchildren. Wheel him in there. If there's anybody else still alive, wheel him in there. Man, you gotta be. And for it to happen at this moment, oh my goodness. One, I can't say enough. If you have not seen, reading is more important than watching television, and they have a number of books written about the assassination of Patrice Lumumba, like racks of them, more than you could read. They've got newer ones, the Lumumba plot and all of that, but man, that is one where you could do a lot of research. You could learn a lot about the global system of white supremacy, racism. Minister Malcolm X talked about this case all the time, the assassination, and then what race soldiers globally, what white people were doing in this part of the world, the so-called Congo. But reading more important than watching television. Say that again. Even documentaries. That's it. If you have not seen Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat, given what has happened now with the prosecution, you should definitely watch it. It would be best if you could watch it on the big screen. Like, I'm so glad that that's the way that I got to see it, especially the first time around. Just wow. But you should definitely watch it if you have not seen it. And then the extra wackiness of this week. If I had to pick one figure, and I mean it's so many folks, right? Billions of people on the planet. It's been so many millions and millions and billions of victims of racism, and even millions of racists. So I mean, there's lots of folks that you could study about this system. Hopefully, figure out some things to solve the problem. But if there's one person, and I would say, hey, this is somebody that you could research for your whole life. Like, you could spend years, like you could be watching things and reading things, and it would allow you to learn lots about many different areas of people activity, and lots about different parts of the world and how racism works. If I had to pick one person, and I mean you could pick a lot of different people, if I had to pick one person, Patrice Lumumba. You can learn so much about how the system of white supremacy and global, this is not going to be you upset white people in Belgium, and that's, no, white people in the USA and Canada and England and South Africa. Like, oh my God, it is amazing. You get to see how they use other victims of white supremacy. That's why Fuller talks about it so important in terms of non-white people not engaging in violence with other non-white people. This is why got to get non-white people to be violent with other non-white people. That is a massive component of the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. And even this is one that is not just, oh man, you're talking about old starchy white people kill non-white people all the time, every 5 minutes. True. This is a case, like I said, hey, now, you know, if you can pick something to really study the system of white, oh my God, you want to talk about, like, now, why did Patrice Lumumba have to be killed? Why is this relevant? 2026. Look at your iPhone. Look at your tablet. And all those drones that they're talking about. If white people don't have a system of white supremacy racism where we dominate the entire planet, anything in the area of the world, now we called this the Belgian Congo. Now if you all want to change it around and call it, make up new names for the place, hey, whatever. At the end of the day, long as we can come in here and get whatever we need whenever we want to, great. Don't be talking about switching things up and you don't want to do this and blah, blah, blah. Whoa. We'll starve everybody here, kill everybody here. Just, look at why is the assassination of Patrice Lumumba important? Look at your phone. Or it could be, hey, look at the genocide happening to the dark people in the Congo. But since they're not like African Americans, then, you know, whatever. But still, look at your phone. That right there is why this is important. 2026. But there's so many layers that you can learn. And at least for me personally, man, the wackiness of this, this week stumbled, totally random. I stumbled in, part of it was because I had the Seattle International Film Festival in my brain computer. It's coming closer than, you know, I would like. In a good way, though, but I mean, it's a lot to do. Anyway, but it is looming. But I was remembering, and I saw a soundtrack to Coup d'etat first there, and they also had a film on Dag Hammarskjöld, who is a suspected race soldier who was, many people think, assassinated months after the assassination of Patrice Lumumba. All about the same thing, same area of the world, and we got to control mineral wealth. White people got to control the wealth here. And I unfortunately missed that documentary at the festival, and I was upset about it and wanted to get more details. So I said before, almost all the movies, all the films at the festival are about racism, period. And so that was one that I missed. And so I saw, and they have a number of books and films about him, because this is another murder at the same time. Where I said murder, many people, think this is a murder. Anyway, so I saw a documentary about him, and I thought it was the one that I missed at the festival. Like, oh man, let me see if I can compensate for that and watch it now. So I start watching it. I get like 30 minutes into it, and I'm like, oh no, this is not that film. But it is, same subject matter, all that. So I get into it, and they do touch on Patrice Lumumba and why this is relevant now, your iPhone and control of it. But, oh, man, they do the same thing global, that this is white people around the world. It is not just going to be white people in Belgium or white people in France. It is going to be a globe. Even if white people have conflict with one another, they will still work together to deal with their Lumumba problem. We will work together, deal with that, and then we'll get back to squabbling and all the rest of it. Anyway, this documentary about the assassination of Dag Hammarskjöld, who is a white man, but thinking that he might mess things up in the Congo or, whatever. And so they go into detail about how all of this happened. And they pull in the white people from South Africa and their group, SAIMAR. So this is an acronym, SAIMR. I think this is South African Institute of Maritime Research. I'm not an Afrikaner, and this is one of those secret racist groups, but I think that's what it is, South African Institute of Maritime Research. And so these race soldier South Africans, Elon Musk's cousins, and now that I think about it, some of them that they talked to, they did look like Elon Musk. But either way, they're talking to them, and they're going up to the Congo, which I knew this was not new information. They're going up to the Congo because they're too upset. And they even said explicitly, they said verbatim, so why are you doing this? Is this about white supremacy? Yes. This is about white supremacy on the continent of Africa. Andre Bloom's book is titled My Country, Africa. The white man in the film said, we in South Africa, we were in the Congo, where we can't say we got some connection and we fought for this place, whatever. Congo is not close to South Africa at all. But we went up there. Why? We are for white supremacy on the continent. Whole thing. Cairo to Cape Town. That's what he said. And he said white supremacy. He didn't say no white privilege, bias. He didn't sound ignorant about race. I mean, if you say all that we got to travel, that's like, I think that might even be like 1,000 miles. Africa is massive. To get from Cape Town to Kinshasa, I'm going to look that up and see how far it is. Anyway, but you can't tell me you ignorant. You got to pack a whole lot of draws to do a trip like that. And you going to kill people? Come on. Anyway, so they're going into the details about what all they were doing, and we got to go kill negras and blah, 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 and all this. And so in the midst of recounting all that they did, the white man says, and we set up the medical clinics to spread AIDS amongst the black people. Now, this was not the subject of the documentary, so I thought they were just going to kind of slide on by that one. And, wow, did you hear the wackiness that he said? That's not what happened. They let him continue and then went back and said, did you say you? And so they go and stay on that for, reading is more important than watching television. And the reason, because the first thing that came to my mind when he said that was Michael flippin' Swango. And I think they even said they went to Rhodesia, which is where Michael Swango went to kill black people. He did the exact, and I mean as exactly as he said, we went to support white supremacy on the continent of Africa with the exact same exactness. Mike Swango said, I'm going to go to the continent, Zimbabwe specifically, Rhodesia, whatever. I'm going to go and these niggers, I'm a white guy. They sickly. We didn't beat them down, stuffed them with Cheetos, beat on them, beat on the grandpappies. They need medical care. I'll be a god. I'll just go say, hey, niggers, you need any help? Medical care? Come on and let old Dr. Swango get a look at. Come on over. The white people with Simon, that is exactly what they say, except they said, we're going to spread the AIDS. Mike Swango, he just said, I'm going to kill you and be done. They said, no. And they used the E word. We were about the eradication of the Negro. I said, oh my God, what in the world? And I even had to pause again because now this is a goofy documentary, so they could be lying, but because reading is more important than watching television. Now, I told you the first thing I thought was Michael Swango. Ooh. After I had time to listen, since they did interrogate this, I said, that book that I said is in the top 3 that should maybe be higher. Harriet A. Washington, Medical Apartheid. The dark history of medical experimentation on African Americans from the colonial times to the present. The last chapter of that book is all about that. What did I just say? White people around the world work together to practice white supremacy, racism. Wuta Basson, she talks about how the Dr. Death, he said, I'm going to see if I can concoct chemical and biological warfare to get rid of the Negro. Said they were going to put it on T-shirts. This ain't in no wacky documentary. This is the final chapter in medical apartheid and how Dr. Death in South Africa, he got robust assistance from white doctors and white people, period, here in the U.S. Never prosecuted. Never prosecuted. And I think still practicing medicine today, Hippocratic oath on that. That was what I thought of second, like, whoo, I would have felt if I had not read those two, just those 2 books alone. There's lots of other material, but just those 2 alone, if I'd heard that, I might have thought, whoo, that is wacky. He's lying to us, which they do entertain in the film. That's what I'd have been thinking, but those 2 immediately, yep, he could be lying, but at minimum, I have heard this before from serious sources. Anyway, speaking of not prosecuted, Mike Swango said he didn't even count how many black people he killed on the continent. He was not convicted, prosecuted for any of the. In fact, he filed a suit to say he was a victim of racism, and he won. Global system. That he ignorant white man too? You don't know nothing about racism. Mike Swango, I'm talking about. He ignorant. He don't know nothing. Right. Any hoodles. The number 720-716-7300. The code 564 943-POUND. Press star 61 if you would like to participate. Retired firefighter said he had commentary to share last weekend, and I guess I missed him or was not being cool. Star 61 if you have commentary, so Gus T doesn't have to beg. If you have folks who are not familiar with Patrice Lumumba, you can learn. We read Maya Angelou's autobiography, A Song Flung Up to Heaven, and we went back to back. She talked about Patrice Lumumba and Minister Malcolm X. You can learn so much about the global system of white supremacy racism just studying Patrice. Might even learn a little bit about your iPhone and where it came from, how many niggers had to have fingers chopped off, foot chopped off for you to get that iPhone. Important region of the world. In fact, even they got whole Patrice Lumumba. They used the material from that area of the world in some of their nuclear bombs in World War II. Like, you can learn so much about the system of white supremacy racism just studying who is Patrice Lumumba and why did racists have to kill him. Any hoodles. More study, more reading. We'll figure it out. Counter racism science. Let's see. We should be back for the Catherine Massey Book Club. Make sure I get in my promo now. We are reading a dissertation, which is not a book. That is important to acknowledge for many reasons, because dissertations are structured in a very specific manner because they are not books and they are not intended for the general public. Generally speaking, you would not have a dissertation read in a book club. I know we have folks who have participated in other book clubs in their life once and or dozens of times. If we have anybody who's been in a book club where they've read a dissertation, please let us know. You can just drop a text, email, call in for a quick 30 seconds. Yes, I was in a book club. We read a dissertation. This is what it was. But generally speaking, that doesn't happen. Man, the reason we are reading this dissertation in the book club, Dr. Frances Cress Welsing. Did you hear? They were talking about the skin tanning at the beginning, and I started off with Dr. Welsing. Man, I said it should be impossible to write a book. If someone tasked you, write a book about the history of black bookstores and specifically racism, repression of black bookstores, write a book about that and be, as detailed as you can, accurate, detailed as you can. If I tasked you with doing that, I think it would be impossible to not have Dr. Frances Cress Welsing in that book. Impossible. Neely Fuller Jr. too, both of them. When we finished Shar Adams' book, and that happened, both of them were excluded, I said, man, Dr. Beckles wrote a whole dissertation on the same subject matter, and both of those authors are mentioned. We are halfway through the book, dissertation, pardon. We are now, and where are we in the dissertation? This is where we are exactly. Section title, Aggressive Repression, Heavy Surveillance, Assassinations, Tax Games, Legal Lynching. That's where we are in the dissertation. Dr. Welsing has already been mentioned. She will be mentioned in detail as we move to this section. No coincidence. That's why I said it should be impossible to do like an accurate study of the history of black bookstores, especially if you're going to talk about like 20th century, 21st century. It should be impossible to do that, and Welsing, Fuller are not named. And in detail it should be, both for their book and for the lectures and things. That exactly what we are about to talk about this Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. This is why we read the book. People, and he went and did interviews, people talking about Dr. Welsing, her presence in these bookstores, and or reading the ISIS papers, how that impacted them, all that. That is super looking forward this Friday, and the repression component looking forward. This is why to read her dissertation, which I've been very impressed with. And again, we are reading a dissertation with a subheading like what I just read, written by a privileged black male who committed suicide in Washington State. Catherine Massey Book Club, Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific. War on Black Book Stores. Let's see. The audio reports that we are skin cancer. Donald Trump. Dr. Welsing, I can see the smile. Now that one, my question would be, now why do you think, Dr. Welsing, that President Trump, in the midst of all of his stomping around the globe and bombing in Iran and got to go and smack Nicolas Maduro up in Venezuela and said, hey, I'm about to do whatever I want to with Cuba. In the midst of all of that, you know, you don't need all these restrictions on the tanning bed. Why would he be doing that in this environment on a warming planet? What say, Dr. Welsing? What say? Just to, even I've heard her many times talking about how even in spite of all of the warnings and increases in skin cancer and all of that, still got to do it. Now, they said in the segment, they talked to young people who were suffering from skin cancer where they said the opposite. They said, I wish I had known. I wish someone had told us, and then maybe we would have made adjustments, or maybe we wouldn't have done this at such a young age. I don't know. But I would be curious to hear what Dr. Welsing has to say about, now we're not even going to do the restrictions. Like, man, have even more folks getting, more white people getting cancer. I don't know how many dark people are going to do the tanning bed. I know they have lots of those here in the Seattle area because we have so much, overcast and cloudiness for such a big chunk of the year. Even, now that it is spring official, still have quite a bit of overcast and cloudy days. So you got to go touch up. I know I got to get my touch up at the tanning bed. Can't be going out there looking pale and sickly for the summertime. Let's see. The segment about the parasites that people have in the worms. Oh my gosh. I played that one. I can tell you the first thing that popped in my head, I'm not going to say name, but victim of white supremacy popped in immediately because they are serious about them parasites. I will concede, I am not a medical doctor. That's it. I just find it, people who are not doctors like Gus T and who do not sit around and research anything as much as I can tell. Now I am, making, they might say you are assuming, Gus T, to a degree. I guess you might be correct. But I mean, people that, and I have specific folks in mind that I'm thinking about who talk about these worms and parasites and all that. These are not people that when they come to talk to me about all this, they do not bring books, literature. They are not doctors, nutritionists, none of that. Generally, their exclusive source of information is such and such said this on TikTok. Such and such said this on YouTube. I guess eventually it might be, now the chatbot said such and such too. Throw that in as well. I mean, victims guaranteed qualified, but I mean, man, like, I would maybe feel differently about it if this is someone who they studied health or nutrition anyway, or they worked in that field, or at least like they showed me that their research consisted of something beyond Instagram. if that's going to be the basis of it, and oh my goodness, the parasites, we got to do something about the parasite, and literally the cherry on top. You cannot be the person to come and talk to me about parasites and you are eating Chips Ahoy cookies and Lunchables. No disrespect. I'm not hating on any. If you munching on Chips Ahoy right now, I'm not hating, or that is ultra processed food. But either way, I'm not judging. I'm not, whatever. Victims guaranteed qualified. All I'm saying is I would take it a lot more seriously if you had an organic apple, pineapple, drinking just some tea. You wasn't even about, you got my tea here, doing my little water thing, blah, blah, blah. Okay, it would, at least the message would come to me but I mean, you talking about parasites with Chips Ahoy cookies? WTH. Like, man, do the IG, do they talk about that? Like, if we got the parasite, maybe put the Chips Ahoy cookie down, or... Ugh, man. Anyway, I just... Fiber, if I was going to say anything, do research beyond what is on social media, and fiber. We could eat more fiber, drink more water. Simple things. Very simple things. Eating more foods that don't have to be in the microwave, just very simple things before we get to, we got to do the parasite cleanse 3 times a year that, I guess in a very unrelated way, you're going to have to pay what they said, about $150 per cleanse. Like, woo, come on. Let's see. Speaking of food, at least to me, what is way more important, we lost D'Angelo at 51. They mentioned Chadwick Boseman, 43. They said, this is CBC's, they're talking about Canada, but the same would apply here. North America is not that. For the 51st state, Trump said, coming for you next. They talked about the increasing numbers of young people with all of these colorectal cancer, and again, D'Angelo, he had pancreatic cancer. All of these are gastrointestinal cancers. And it's what is happening here? What's changed? They say it seems like everybody's saying it seems like a big component of this has got to be the foods and all these ultra processed foods. Now, they also mentioned stress, alcohol consumption. Those would be massive for people classified as black. All of them, really. White supremacy, racism, you got all that massive stress. All of us, anxiety, ongoing all day long. Then the food, where they put us in areas where we do not have access to adequate stores or have the worst quality produce, and then poor information about how to adequately nourish ourselves, and or they just make it really expensive. So even if you do have all that information correct, they make it $15,000 for an organic apple, and then go and fire you from your job, so then you can't afford it anyway. And then alcohol consumption, where they pushed a lot of what they say is Negro culture, Mad Dog 2020, and all of those hyper-infused malt liquors, and all the rest of it. But just really, it'd say Negro culture is kind of carcinogenic. But the food, that would really be ground zero. And what the Chips Ahoy, the Lunchables, and really, we're going to do as best we can. We read Harriet A. Washington is on my top 10 book list 2 times. A Terrible Thing to Waste. She talks explicitly about foods not to eat, and trying to eat more organic, fresh produce, getting away from the Chips Ahoy and Cheetos and all of that nonsense. That would be ground zero. The ultra-processed foods, and hey, I've had hot dogs, I had my Lunchables, I had my Chips Ahoy, all of that Cheetos, had them by the barrels. It would be best, and a lot of that stuff starting when I was a child, it would be best, hey, if we're going to have a black child victim of racism, Let's get our diet correct. They're not going to see us eating no Cheetos, talking about the attempted parents. Our child is not going to see us eating no Chips Ahoy cookies. We're not even going to have that that stuff in the house. We're in an obesogenic environment. Judith N. Layson told us that, carcinogenic environment as well. So if they go outside or if they ever go to any of their little child's friends' birthday parties or whatever, they'll probably get some of that stuff eventually, like we did. But we will make sure that they are not inundated with it. And same thing, I said I would tell if I had offspring or if I had young cousins, nieces, nephews, whatever, I would tell them. One, I would do my best if I'm preparing foods, make whole foods so they don't feel like they gotta eat Lunchables and all that, and they don't feel like they're missing out. They eat, when we eat tasty things that they enjoy, get their vegetables and all that, whole foods with lots of fiber. And I would tell them, hey, Chadwick Boseman, hey, D'Angelo, hey, white people want us eating Cheetos so that they have lots more. Oh my Lord, 51? Oh my good, 43? Oh, that is exactly what they want. And the lack of vitality, we talked about that with Christopher Everett. When even, let's say Chadwick Boseman was still here, they start, when you get all those medical conditions, you don't start losing the energy and vitality to even want to replace white supremacy with, you might have medical appointments. At minimum, you got to remember to take all that medication. Sometimes that makes you drowsy. Hurricane Katrina, talk about another one that you can learn a lot about, system of white supremacy. They were literally black people because of the system of white supremacy racism, but because of that, they didn't have the health and vitality to walk to save their lives. White people are most to blame, but that doesn't make it too much better if you can't, walk out of flood water. I would make it age appropriate. I would share information like that report from CBC with especially if I had children that they're, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18 and up. Oh yeah. Share that information. They need to be reading things like this so that they can take care of themselves as they get older. Hopefully they'll have children so they can pass that information on as well. But yes, so that they can grasp like, wow, this is a part of white supremacy racism. Yes. So that you can be hooked on Ozempic. Yes. And so that we don't want no Neely Fuller Juniors. You ain't supposed to be staying around here till 100 trying to be constructive. Talking about you going to replace white supremacy with justice and maybe live long enough to do so. No. We need you out of here. 43, 45. And like I said, if Neely Fuller Jr. had not taken care of himself, say, hey, what are we supposed to be doing? Correct uses of time and energy. I'm going to just eat crazy. I'm going to eat Cheetos every day. I love Cheetos. I love hot dogs. Mr. Fuller might have loved Lunchables too. He could have done all that. Could have earned the right to do all that. Maybe he leaves us at 77. What sort of impact is that, having 20 less years of Neely Fuller Jr.? Or if he's here, but I can't play on the phone with y'all because, I'm not feeling it. I got to take my medication, Same thing for Dr. Welsing. She didn't get to live as long, but hey, she was here in her 80s. Sound mind, doing programs, hanging out with us 31 times. Same thing. That would be massive pride. That's one, in fact, I'm nervous and I don't know what to say to my child and blah, blah, blah. I say, oh, that's rubbish. You can talk to your child about your experience with white people. Focus on the food. While you figure out what you're going to tell them about what white people have done to you, your white friends, talk to them about the food. Because that's massive. That's massive. Food, that's way easy, right? Should be. They got books. films, we got programs. That should be way easy. Just getting, and hey, the payoff, maybe it'll be a little bit easier to get them to eat them carrots, green beans, spinach, maybe. And I would tell them that too, man. You acting like I don't like carrots. That's exactly what racists want to hear. You don't want them carrots. You want some Cheetos, don't you? You want some potato chips, don't you? That's exactly what racists want to hear. And then look back, D'Angelo. Now, I probably wouldn't do all that if they were 6 or something, but, oh yeah, they get up to 10, 11, 12. Yeah, and I said, I would remind them, Negro culture, we are not healthy. Look at your black relatives. Talk to them. What do you eat? What did you eat growing up? These are easy ones. You don't have to go and ask them, what's your definition of racism? Did you read the ISIS papers? And if not, why? How long you been a coon? No, these are easy ones. What do you eat? Are you in good health? And then you watch. See what they eat. What did you eat growing up? Oh, okay. And just pay attention. Massive one. Massive one. We can all do better on that. Gus T, drinking more water. We can all do that. Cutting out those goofy drinks, Starbucks and all that, where they load us up with all that sugar. We can all do better on that one. But that is massive. That's probably another one they'll find out and tell us, down the line, all the ultra processed foods in addition to racism and all the rest of it. Like, oh my God, like, oof. No wonder you're not going to live past 50 years old. They even said the leading cause of death for males under 50 in Canada was colorectal cancer. Like, what? Man, get you some fiber. Get you some fiber. Ultra-processed foods. Hey, maybe staying at home and doing a little bit more cooking is not so bad after all. Put that on Chadwick Boseman. Let's see. The segment about the plug-in solar panels, I thought that was important. It even was kind of tugging at my brain computer. We're going in the exact opposite direction. Dr. Kanban said cesspoolians destroy the planet, and we will make it difficult. Anything that might lessen the burden so we don't have to add all these poisons and toxins and use up all these resources. I don't know. We don't want no solar panels. We don't want no hydro setup. We don't want no wind turbine. None of that. We want coal and all that, and do some more polluting. That was what it reminded me of with those plug-in solar panels, particularly when they mentioned Germany. And they said they got thousands of them there, and they've had no safety concerns. Is this really a safety issue that they're talking about? Or is this just, oh, no, we don't want no competition. We want you all to have to spend all that money. We got wartime pricing, too, so we want all them extra dollars that you all have to spend for electricity and lighting and all the rest of it. That might be one if you live in a region where they, make the allowances and what have you, and you can obtain them. That might be one. Get some solar panels, like, hey, and that might be something at emergency situations and such. I could see where that could be quite useful. Maybe something to investigate, if your region allows. Let's see. The 60 Minutes segment on Haiti, I do want to say I did insert the laugh track at the beginning when Anderson Cooper, he said, we hear news reports about Haiti. It's generally not anything good. I put the laugh track there, like, race so. Of course, we never hear anything good about Haiti. But they said that we're going to have faith in Mr. Mitch Albom, as the children called him, white man, who went down here to run this orphanage to keep all the white children safe from the gangs and crazy black people and what have you. I just thought that's one more of those segments. We got to have a white savior. It's all going to go to ruination unless white people come to save us, especially in Haiti. The wording in that segment, even them saying that this island has a checkered history. That word specifically is in Neely Fuller Jr.'s word guide, which is that we would not have the word guide if he had been eating Cheetos and had not been with us until 96. He said, or in that report rather, but they said the checkered past of Haiti. I was thinking like the checkered, so you mean like the UN coming and spreading cholera all over the place? That's what you mean, checkered past? Or you mean checkered past like when them 10 missionaries got arrested for kidnapping children after the earthquake in 2010? That's what you mean, checkered past? Or you talking about like, come on, man, like, come on. Anything that's wrong with Haiti or black people in general, non-white people in general, white people are to blame. Checker. They ran the island for like years. The U.S. military, like, what do you mean? Checkered past. Like, get out of here. Anderson, you have to be shamed, Anderson Cooper. But they talk about all these children that just said they found under a tree. I think white people love report. That's one I would chalk Negro trauma drama, but the international version, where they talk about, hey, sometimes it'll be Africa or whatever, but just love. Got to show Haiti this wretched conditions, and the only time it'll be good is if a white person has come here to do something quality. And even then, we got to hide behind the gates and all that. They even had the scene where the little child that they were talking to, he said, oh my goodness, I didn't know what to think. When Mitch Albom, the white man who runs the orphanage, he brought us in, I said, oh my goodness, it's my first time seeing an American. He's so pale, my God. They don't have the tanning beds in Haiti, I guess. Let's see. The blockade in Cuba, I think that is massively important. We have read 4 works in a row in the Catherine Massey Book Club that have mentioned Assata Shakur. If she were still alive, she would sure enough be a victim of all of these blackouts and everything else, terror that a lot of non-white people in that area are going through with this blockade. And then having the blockade and President Trump talking about, I can do whatever I want with it. It'll be my privilege to be the one to take it. Like, what? What? Who? I've never heard like I mean, I guess I didn't, maybe we had been around earlier, but I have never heard a white prime minister, president, so-called leader of a country just sit around and talk about taking that Canada got them 51st state, Venezuela take them, like Greenland get that. I have never heard of anything like that. Like, wow, what? President Trump, or maybe he will do a third term. We'll have to see. Whole new, I'm taking everything, a new era of U.S. empire. The segment on the drones, I thought was massively important as well. I do not oppose any non-white people in the world who say that they want to get arms, whatever that means to them. No opposition to that at all. The only thing I've said is particularly we're pretty much like mid-21st century at this point. It's nigh on 2030. To be having efforts like not effing around, remember them? That was just like 2 years ago, middle of the pandemic. These are black people in this part of the world where they're like stomping around, marching in the street, firearms in the air. Like, are you serious? I'd said that for some years, like you have some black people, even on a micro scale, Philando Castile, or you want to, I even remember this was like circa 2010. These were non-white people. They were upset with Neely Fuller Jr. and they said that they felt he should have his section on war they did not agree with, and that it should be, for lack of a better term, more militaristic. Or they didn't agree with you have to self-terminate, whatever. We didn't agree with any of that, and it should be totally different, and that Fuller is a lame type thing. And for the method that they were outlining, it's the same thing that I would say now, like, oh my God, like, they get Timmy, who's 16, with a Lunchable and a drone, he'll mow us all down. Like, we like out in the street with our little gun and white down with whitey and man, and I mean, it'd be easy, which it generally is, white versus non-white in violence, generally pretty easy. That's what the record shows. the pattern would continue. But I mean, that's what I mean, like really giving it some thought if it's going to be counter violence, even on the micro scale, because we've already seen what this looks like to a degree. And when I say this on the micro scale, remember Micah Xavier Johnson down in Texas? Everything going back to Texas. This is circa 2016. Philando Castile, Alton Sterling had just been shot and killed in Louisiana and Minnesota, respectively. President Trump on the campaign trail, first time around when he was going to be victorious. They had that protest in Dallas specifically, and the 5 officers were shot and killed. And they said the alleged shooter, Micah Xavier Johnson, and they used the robotic device to go in, and it had an incendiary device. Vaporized him, basically. That's what I mean. Now, they say he killed 5 officers. We just use that. That's the 10 years ago version of the drone. They got refinements by now, many times over. That's what I'm saying. It would have to be some thought. Not, saying be cowardly or anything of the sort, even though I can understand that too, but it would require some thought, given that we are dealing with the masters of killing. Patrice Lumumba. The segment on ICE going around and snatching the DNA samples, that's something we've talked about before in regular police departments. That would I certainly would not encourage any non-white people to be out in any groups protesting ICE. Dr. Welsing had talked to us about this sort of thing before. I would not recommend that. I say let white people go and do all of that. That way, if it's any whoops, or even, you get body slammed and cracked ribs and then they got to do a DNA. White people can deal with all of that. They know how to handle all of that. They have the attorneys and the medical benefits. They can deal with that much better. I would not even recommend black people be out engaged in any of that. And that would be a part of the reason why. And everything that they said, what do they do with your DNA once they have it? How long do they have it? Does this get sold to someone else? Like, whew, but this isn't even your local. This isn't even a local database. This is a federal database. Come on. Let's see. Last thing I'll get in, or maybe, well, yeah. The road rage incident with Peter Caci. I think that's how you say his name, C-A-C-I, Caci. I think that's how they said it. But he's the township official, white man, suspected race soldier in Manheim, M-A-N-H-E-I-M. This is in Pennsylvania. And the demographics of Manheim Township, it's 81% white. 2.6% Negra. Sundown townish. But one, I would not get into any kerfuffles, arguments. I wouldn't even do no shouting with anybody on the road. They have so many reports about where these incidents have escalated into something fatal, where so many people are armed now and they got their concealed carry and all the rest of it. I would assume the person that just cut you off or took your parking place or whatever it is, I would assume this person is armed. I think one of the victims of Peter Caci in this report says she had her 2-year-old son in the car with her. It would have been bad enough if this, all it was, Negro, don't you cut me off. He layers on that would have been bad enough. But I mean, all the extra. They had one of the victims, she said she pulled her phone out and he came and tried to smack the phone out. And I even have to pause right there. That is exactly what I have talked about for some time. My personal recommendation, you are out in public, that sort of thing happens, you're in a car, white person gets aggressive, calls you Negro, gets in your personal space, is threatening, you feel like, oh, this might get, volatile. I recommend exit. If you need to get a picture or something quick for identification purposes, their license, whatever, it is a click and we are out of here. I am not of the fan of stay and video record, because I've seen over and over for years, generally racists, they escalate when we pull the phone out. The attitude, the racist code seems to be, oh, nigger, you want film? I'm going to give you something to film. That's what I've seen consistently. Or, at minimum, I'm going to knock the phone out of your hand, which now we at assault. Because I got to smack you, hit you, whatever it is. I'm going to knock the phone out of your hand. I'm going to throw something on you. I've seen that. I'm going to throw my coffee on you to see if I can mess the phone up, mess you up too, that sort of thing. I've just seen over and over again where the race soldier, they do not de-escalate. I'm going to do even more now since you want to act like you're going to stream me or something. So, the same thing Fuller said. Once it escalates and, nigger, who do you think? And you done took my pocket, you cut. Once that it's time to go. If we're on the road, if you can pull over and let that person continue on. If this is a highway type thing, take the exit. Go to the most crowded place that you can possibly find. They got security, get to them immediately. If the person is found, like, call the police, security, all of that. Most crowded place that you can find. Biggest grocery store with hundreds, maybe 1,000 people. Sam's, Walmart, Sam's Club, that's what you want to do. Costco, lots and lots of people where they hopefully have lots of employees and lots of cameras and security where you can go and let them know exactly what's happening. But I would not try to do anything where you're going to just stay right in front of them, close proximity, and record. Man, I have seen where that can get volatile. Any hoodles. But for the road specifically, defensive driving, like, you have no idea how many people do they have in the vehicle with them. Do they have other drivers in other vehicles who are driving along with them who are going to join in this? Even random white people who might join in this? Are they armed? Am I prepared to die? Are they going to shoot at my 2-year-old? It's way too many variables. Same thing Fuller said. I left the house with my 2-year-old to go to the store to get diapers. I did not come out here for no Mortal Kombat. That being the case, I let all that go. Get his license plate and gotta let all that go. I did not come out for that. I could die in 5 minutes. My child could die in 5 minutes. She said it was traumatizing, and it sounds traumatizing from what they said. Both of them, both of the two, it was 2 different incidents. Both of them, it sounds traumatizing, and white people have reports. There's more of this. And more of these incidents are becoming fatal, where it's going to be some violence, even if I just have to bop you upside the head, which is kind of what happened here. You're out on the road. I would be super vigilant if you are out on the road. If anything like this happens, somebody gets irate, because they got situations where people have came out with like a crowbar or a baseball bat or something. Like, man, come on. Even I remember retired firefighter. He said his offspring, they were coming back from the gym, not doing anything wild, crazy, anything, trying to be constructive, get a little exercise. They're coming back from the gym, have vehicle difficulties, so they're pulled over on the side trying to call and, get the tow or whatever they need to get moving again. And all of a sudden, some white race soldier comes up. What's going on here? Y'all out looting, raping? And he said his offspring, correctly trained, calls him Johnny on the spot. Active father comes, and turns out this race soldier is armed. That's what I mean. They didn't go out for no Mortal Kombat. We came to get some exercise, do some pull-ups at the gym. Race soldier, maybe he left. I came to shoot a nigger. Same might be with the Manheim Township, Peter Caci. I came to terrorize nigger. And since it was 2 of them, I would think maybe that's exactly what he was thinking. I got on the road, hopped in my vehicle to terrorize and black female drivers. Like, it's so cowardly. He could have went out there in Pennsylvania. I'm sure you could have went and found a lot of white dudes. Yell at them, fuss at them, and then it'll be white man on white man. That's reasonable. You can even put the F word. That's fair. No. I'm going to go yell and terrorize a black mom with her 2-year-old child. I'm a man. That's white culture. We got years of that, decades of that. And he's supposed to, you can't even say, oh, well, you know, he's a child. He's one of these ignorant. He didn't know no better. He's the township official. I would show that report to life. You got young drivers, too, especially if you have young drivers. These were not young drivers, obviously, but especially if you have young drivers, I would show them that report. If you just are beginning your driving career, getting some experience behind the wheel, you might make some errors. So the cursing and rage might be directed at you. You didn't park correctly and all the rest of it. Hey, no escalating. Get you one of them tags, stickers for your car, student driver, no escalating. No escalate. You don't have anything to say. If you messed up, my fault. I'm going to try and do better. I'm going to pay it forward and do better. I'm going to pay it forward and do better and be a patient driver. You have nothing to say. I'm not doing it. What did you call me? You don't talk. You could die in the next, really, like 3 seconds. Any hoodles. We'll see if folks have their commentary to share. Invest if the cows is constructive. Hit the blog, racism-notes.blogspot.com, racism-notes.blogspot.com. PayPal button in the top right corner. You'll see the links beneath the button for Cash App, Venmo, PayPal, our Amazon wish list. Much obliged for all the investors who kept us on for 17 years, hopefully worthy of your time and energy. You can nab an item from the wish list at Amazon, listed under Gus T. Renegade. Much obliged. For the folks who've kept us broadcasting for 17, hopefully we have been more accurate than not, worthy of your time and energy. Let's see if folks have thoughts and or suggestions on the road rage component for sure, because I certainly, like I said, my recommendation, no getting out, brawling, any of that nonsense with anybody. You don't even have anything to say to anybody on the road. White, non-white, that's irrelevant. If they did wrong, you did wrong. I think the only time there should be something to say, if there was an accident, insurance, police need to be called, something of that nature. Other than that, I'm not talking to nobody on the road. Like, I personally, and folks, this will be you can press star 6-1. You have anything to share, we'll give folks like 5 minutes. They have commentary since they say I missed folks last time around. But I personally, I was at one of those big stores I just mentioned. We were at Costco. It's a group of us, all victims of racism. We go on the worst. Idiots go on a weekend when it's going to be super duper crowded. We go on a weekend. Soon as we pull into the establishment, literally, we have not exited the vehicle, we haven't entered the store, nothing. Pull into the establishment, for whatever reason, there's some white man who is yelling, screaming. I have no idea. Like I said, we literally just pulled into the lot. For whatever reason, one of the victims that vehicle I'm in, they do have non-white children. For whatever reason, victim I'm in the vehicle with rolls down his window. Oh, you want to start something? What's going on, buddy? My jaw hit the floor like what? Same thing I've been saying to you. You have no idea. Is this person armed? Is this person having a mental health episode? Is this Tim McVeigh? Does this person have a bomb? We have little people in the vehicle. Like, what are you doing? De-escalate. Fuller said that my system of white supremacy, the thought process should be, we are victims of racism. We are in danger. It is not safe on the plantation. We should function that way. Not, I am looking for conflict. I am trying to escalate things. Like, no. Not at all. That is not the way that we should be looking, particularly at rent. Like, I did not go to, or I don't think, if they were going to Costco to engage in conflict with random strangers, I would not have gone. Like, y'all handle that. Let me know. I hope it works out for y'all, and maybe I'll take a nap. I'll pray for y'all in your absence. But I thought we were going to get samples and groceries, not random brawl, maybe Mortal Kombat in the parking lot on a weekend. That's what I mean for the road rage type situations. If you are out and about, especially I would tell young drivers, I can't say that enough, especially for young motorists, just got on the road and haven't been driving a year or so, even if it's been a couple years, remind them it is super dangerous, and it's lots of folks who have their concealed carry and or a baseball bat. You do not want any sort of, and they have so many cases where people have been killed and all the rest of it, and the racism comes out like what you just heard. You do not want to engage. Distance. See if you can, like I said, just take the exit. You can get back on the highway if that's what it is. Turn, get to the nearest, most crowded venue with lots of cameras, hopefully security. You can call police, make the report. Like I said, if it's just a quick snap of a picture to get like a license plate, identification purposes, if you're maybe like myself and you aren't perfect with identifying makes and models of vehicles immediately. Oh, okay, you can take a quick picture so that way, okay, I got the license plate, bam, at least I got the picture, that way I can figure out the make and model of the vehicle later, and we're out of here. Great. That's what I advocate, not stand and I'm going to, video record you for the next 5 minutes and while you're tearing up my car, because I've seen that too. Even sometimes where people, there's been the barrier of I'm going to video while I'm in my vehicle so you can't, strangle and beat on me, but I can key your vehicle. I can throw my beverage on your vehicle and all the rest of it. So yeah, I'm an advocate. Let's get on out of here. I'm not trying to get footage for my social media account or my YouTube channel, or at least I'm not trying to get this footage for those purposes. I'm trying to survive the day, get back to a safer location. That's what I recommend. If folks have a better counter-racist strategy, especially for those road rage type situations, please share, and especially for folks who have children, because that is so scary. Like, man, mom, dad, anybody, you have your child in, I don't have offspring, but I do know that just like, man, that is a total and these are like young children. She said she had her 2-year-old in the car. Like, man, Miriam I. Carey. Oh, that is beyond scary. Like, yeah, that's one I would definitely think about. If you're an attempted parent, that might drastically alter your driving code to make sure that you minimize the likelihood of that sort of thing happening over some sort of nonsense argument about a parking space, or you cutting me off, or you were following too close, or whatever. Like, man, I got my offspring in here. We already got enough difficulties. I'm trying to keep them away from Mary Kay Letourneau. I'm going to drive real slow and keep distance, keep distance, keep distance. I'll leave it at that. Like I said, if folks have thoughts or a code that has worked well for them staying safe on the road, especially with children, young children at that, and or a code for how you share this information with your young folks, if you got those 15, 16, 18-year-olds who, either just started driving or haven't been driving very long, what information you share so that they kind of grasp some of these, I guess, maybe hidden dangers that might not be covered in their driver education classes and such. Let us know so that we can pass this on to younger non-white folks, victims of racism. That's it. We will be here Thursday, neutralizing workplace racism, and then Friday, Dr. Francis Cress-Welsing. This is the part of the dissertation. This is why Gus T chose this work. Dr. Welsing to see what was her impact influence in black bookstores in the 20th century and beyond. Neely Fuller Jr. coming down the pike as well. I don't think he's mentioned this week, but he's coming up later on in the book. But I know Dr. Welsing, she was mentioned last week. She'll be popping up again. Well, she was mentioned yesterday. She'll be popping up again this week, and I think multiple times. We'll get some important context about her presence and what it meant having her. Like I said, just think about that. Being able to go to the bookstore and reliably, consistently bump into Dr. Welsing. She's there plucking books here and there, talking about what she just read, and like, Jesus, with that right there, that is why race soldiers would attack black bookstores. That right there. We are not trying to have no black people inspired to read, and certainly we don't want no venue where they can be bumping into the likes of Dr. Welsing or anybody else being constructed. They said Toni Morrison was hanging out too. They probably don't want that either. Maybe you come and ask one too many questions about the bluest eye. Any hoodles. We will do it at minimum on Thursday. Hopefully worthy of your time and energy. Sobriety would be best under conditions of white supremacy. All that talk about ultra-processed foods, carcinogenic foods, gastrointestinal cancers, they did say alcohol consumption is a component. They said increasing alcohol consumption for young ladies, so for sure, males and females, sobriety would be best. It's springtime now, so we can do dry spring. We can go out and get all our endorphins and fun from extra little bit of sunshine and a little bit longer daylight. Go out and do some frolicking, fresh air, all of that. We don't need maybe the mad dog to get our stimulant. That's it. Creator, we ask that you remind us, stop saying not all white people are racist. We ask that you remind us, stop name calling people classified as black. Remind us to maximize our time and energy replacing white supremacy with justice. Refrain from wasting non-white people's time and energy. It has been time. Replace white supremacy with justice immediately. Cal signing out. Thanks all for tuning in. Dr. Francis Cress Welsing coming to the Catherine Massey Book Club on Friday.
Nigga, you so brainwashed. I'm a victim, brother. No problem. You're a victim. I'm a victim of 400 years of conditioning. Shut up. The man has programmed my condition. Even my conditioning has been conditioned.